Hello and welcome to B&E Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is Jeff Meador. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
So why do you make games?
I make games because I love to do it. It's just a lot of fun, and it's something I've always done. I started making them when I was 8 years old with my Commodore 64.
Nice.
So it's just always been a passion of mine to go and create something and find ways to entertain myself or entertain other people. I've always said that if I'm having fun playing it, someone else is going to have fun playing it at some point as well. So it's been a lifelong passion of mine.
So what kind of games were you making when you were 8?
When I was 8, I made a couple of things. Way back then, back when I was a wee boy with a Commodore 64, they would print actual paper books that would tell you how to program with a line-by-line instruction in BASIC of how to program.
It's a semicolon.
Exactly. And my dad would read the book to me, and we would come across statements like return in there, where for an 8-year-old boy, this is very confusing because it's an actual programming term to return. But I would hit return. And so there was a lot of discussion and a lot of learning for both of us at that point.
Nice.
But I would take those books and make there were a lot of roguelikes that were available in that. So things like Telengard, et cetera. So made some games that were a lot like that. But the first ones that I made completely independently were slot machines, because there is nothing more exciting to an 8-year-old child than winning a lot of money, even if it's fake. So I would go and build slot machines, and then I discovered, if I change this, I could win even more money.
Wow, that is such an interesting way to start because, there's not a whole lot of game designers to start where, oh man, I love making slot machines. Yet in the modern era, that is a game that makes a lot of money.
I have always loved Vegas from the moment I first set foot there. I was actually talking to my parents last night, and they were saying something about my first trip to Vegas, and I drove in. I had to be 5 or 6. We drove in, it was late at night, but all the lights were on, and I was just enamored of the place. And the first words out of my mouth were, wow, this is where I'm going to take my honeymoon. But I've always loved casino games. And so that was the first thing that I knew how to make.
So, all right, you started making casino games. When did you start graduating? Like, I can make a business around this.
That didn't happen for several years later. So once I got out of college, I ended up, through a very random series of events, partnering up with a graphic design studio down in San Diego to make some games for the internet. And this was back in 96 or so. So the internet was just starting to come out. You were just starting to see games for things like Shockwave, back when it was Macromedia, et cetera. So games like that. We went and built a series of web-based games for Bumblebee Tuna, of all people.
Bumblebee Tuna.
Bumblebee Tuna was way ahead of their time and said, you know what, this web thing is really cool. We want to really build our presence with kids, so what better way than to put games on our website? Because that's who we think is going after the web, and that's who we want to connect.
That is very forward thinking.
It really was, and we built some awesome games for them. Things like Whale Man, Catch the Tuna, Salmon's Run, and built some really fun games that you could just play on your browser.
Cool. So what was the monetization for it? Was it just like ads or?
This was in 96, so there was not really a monetization strategy.
Right. It was like, let's
that.
make a website and we'll figure it out later.
Exactly. Bumblebee Tuna had us build some games because they wanted to drive traffic. So they didn't have an overriding need to monetize that game. What they wanted to do was build brand with it.
So what was the .com boom like going in the industry in that time?
That was really kind of an odd period for me. I actually stepped out of video games for a little bit during that time, and concentrated on helping .com companies build the architecture for the front-end architecture that they needed for the back-ends that they were building. So I built up a studio that concentrated just on the visual representation of how people would interact with emerging web technologies. So as people were saying, we're going to revolutionize the way that hotels buy their soaps or something like that, then we would go and say, well, if that's the model that you want to do, here's what it needs to look like for an end user. So I built a business around that, and that lasted for a short period of time. So during that big boom, I was not in video games.
Yeah, but you were already starting your own companies and
I was
managing
starting
yourself as an independent contractor.
Absolutely. No, and one of the things that I got out of that was it really taught me how to manage people, how to manage clients and how to manage expectations and how to just get stuff done.
Yeah, that's a really tough skill because there's a lot of people who graduate college and then they try to do, independent contracting and they just have a really hard time knowing how to talk to a client, how to set a value for themselves.
That's been really tricky for me, but it's something that I think I've been very successful at that. I always like to say I've never had a job. I've worked a lot, that's for sure.
Your career has always been your hobby.
My career has always been my hobby, and I have always found ways to work independently so that I have some semblance of control of what I'm doing, which has been fantastic.
So how did you get back into games?
I got back into games when the bubble crashed and everything just started going crazy. I took a step back. I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I started writing poker simulators.
Into casinos.
Getting back into my roots, and so I built up a small company that knew how to write how to execute poker simulations, in everything from how do you play poker, and just getting the basic understanding of what the rules are, to creating artificial intelligence that would strategize how you were going to bet in different scenarios. So built this really complex system so that people could go, or so that you could set up different player types in there. So I've got this person who likes to bluff a lot, or this person who plays very conservatively, this person who likes to bet a lot when they're doing very well, etc. So I built a lot of logic into the system to create those sorts of interactions.
Sounds cool. Yeah,
it was really
simulate
cool.
AI, not just replicating the game.
Exactly, and it was really developed as a tool for people who wanted to learn to play poker better, because oftentimes if you play online, you're playing against people who are betting pennies at a time or betting fake currency, and so they're not betting in a realistic manner if you were to go to Vegas and play at a table.
Yeah.
So I wanted to simulate what would happen if you were playing in a real poker tournament, or if you were playing in a real poker experience, like a really good Saturday night game with your friends.
So were you making this as like, this is my passion project, or were you thinking I'm going to make a bunch of money selling this?
It was a passion project. I made some money selling that, but not a lot. But enough to cover the costs, enough to keep me fed and in my home.
Yeah, enough to buy ramen.
Exactly. Well, no, I did a little bit better than ramen,
right.
But we were SpaghettiOs, but
yeah, exactly.
Still good stuff.
Enough to maintain yourself, which is really impressive.
Yes, but it was something that I really liked, and I've worked really hard to get my work out there and try to find different sources of people different sources that would cover game technology and what's happening in a game that wouldn't necessarily cover video games. So a lot of poker magazines, for instance, wouldn't pay attention to the video game atmosphere and what's going on there. But now that I had something for them to talk about, it was a way for me to get my information and my product out there.
That's a really good point because, so much drama, you have a lot of licensed titles, and that brings in a lot of people who are not in that gamer space. And there's so much competition for games that having some way to stand out and have people talk about you in a non-traditional, here's the game setting is really, really valuable in order to stand out as a company. So it's cool that you kind of had that experience for so long, more so than most other people in the mobile industry.
Yeah, it's something that I really try to concentrate on all of my projects is if I'm going to build a project and invest the time, invest the money to make something, it's got to be something that I enjoy, but I want to make sure that I've got a way to be able to talk about it with people as well. When I'm dealing with licensed properties, that's something that provides an instant connection for a lot of people. But even if I'm working in something that's a little bit outside of that, I want to find a way to make that narrative and make that connection so that people who are not in the traditional gaming media have a reason to talk about it.
So tell me about So Much Drama. Like, how did you start it? What was the deal? Is it just yourself? Did you get friends involved?
It started as just myself, but I had a couple of connections of people who were visual designers, sound designers, etc. So I would call them in as I needed them to help out with my first project. The first project that I did was one called Fireflies that I love. I really, really love this game. And it was a very simple game, but it's a beautiful game with a lot of rich visuals, a lot of rich sound in there. And I put this out as proof of concept, I've always said. I wanted to make sure that I could put something out on the app market, make sure that it got there and it worked, and we were able to release it and people would buy it or spend some sort of money on it. And I did that, and it was very successful, and we got a lot of really good press from it. Like Kotaku picked it up as the game of the day sort of thing.
Nice.
And we got picked up by a couple of other pieces or a couple of other gaming sites for top game of the week, et cetera, which was really surprising to see. But I was very happy with that.
Was it surprising because you didn't like reach out to them and say, "Hey, look at this," or just surprising that they noticed you?
Both. We did do a little bit of outreach. For that first project, I did not know how to deal with the media very well in the app space. It was something that was very new for me, and it was something that was more of a traditional game where we didn't have any special hook to put in there where I could go and reach out to an entertainment website instead of a gaming website and talk to them about it from a different angle. So I was surprised that we got picked up as well as we did, but it was a very pleasant surprise.
So were you entirely self-funded? Did you get an investor?
Entirely self-funded for that.
So like, it's rude to ask specifics, but like what kind of budget frame were you talking about? Like you gave yourself less than $1,000, $10,000. What were you thinking?
I didn't really have a set budget in mind, but I did know that I wanted to do it for less than $10,000. And we made that happen.
Awesome. So what was your next project?
After Fireflies?
Yeah.
After Fireflies, I decided, you know what, this is really cool, but now I want to do something. Now that I've shown that I can create something, I want to do something that I want to do. And I have always loved drag queens. And so I said, there's not a single video game out here that's for or about drag queens. Possibly Bayonetta, but it kind of fits into its own little special realm there. But there's not one that is explicitly about this. So I said, well, screw it. I'm the boss. I get to decide what my next project is. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, it kind of lends itself really well to video games. It's all about over the top, much drama. It's a great name.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm surprised that people haven't picked up on this before because they are such loud characters, and I mean that in several several meanings of the word. But they're such loud, expressive characters with big personalities that you can really animate and really bring out in a video game. So I created something called Dragopolis, and it wasn't tied to any sort of IP or anything like that, but it was just build your own drag queen and let her race through the streets of Dragopolis, which was a lot of fun. We ended up getting 3 celebrity drag queens to sign on to the project at that point, and they would be available as add-on packs where you could download them for another 99 cents sort of thing. We were all ready to go. We had a big launch planned. We had a party down in Los Angeles planned and all sorts of big stuff. Once we announced it, the folks at RuPaul's Drag Race heard about what we were doing because we were trying to make noise. So good, they heard about us. And they said, you know what? Why don't we have a conversation because we think that we can do something more here.
That's just so cool of them to do because it's such great marketing for them. It makes sense.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
synergy both ways.
Yeah, so they contacted us. And we canceled everything. So we canceled the launch, canceled the party, canceled everything, and went back to the drawing board to say, okay, now that we've got the ability to work with RuPaul and the license for the TV show, what can we do that's different? Now, of course, we knew that this TV show existed, and we were very careful in building the original Dragopolis not to mimic anything from the TV show.
You didn't want to intrude on their IP.
Exactly, and we wanted this to be very distinct, and we wanted this to be our IP here. And now we've got their IP coming in, and so we have to change everything. So where we had one scene where it's like, okay, do not make this at all like what you see in RuPaul's Drag Race. Now it's make it exactly like you see.
Make it as close as possible.
But it was a fun project. So it was something that we had a lot of fun doing. And we rewrote storylines to bring RuPaul in and make RuPaul the central figure of everything. And it was really a lot of fun.
So, I think a lot of people didn't touch that IP at first. I would imagine because they're worried about being offensive and not just, portraying drag queens in a very objectified, simplified manner. So, what kind of steps do you take to try and, not do that and to treat it with, celebrating drag queens and not making fun of drag queens?
We worked really closely, not only with the queens who appear in there, but I have a lot of friends who are drag queens or work with drag queens, and I've certainly been around them most of my, or not most of my life, but a good part of my adult life. And so talked a lot with them to just make, say, what do you think about this? One of the things about drag queens is there is definitely a certain culture and there's a certain vocabulary. And so we made sure that when we were going through, we were hitting all of those points in there that were referencing back to certain terms that drag queens use, making sure that we had certain looks in there that were the quintessential drag queen look. And we wanted to make sure that everything was a positive spin on there. The other thing that we knew is this was one of the few games out there that was really made by and for the LGBT community. We've certainly got an audience that's well beyond that, but it is something that, if you're talking about drag queens, yeah, you're talking about the LGBT community. And we wanted to make sure that we were celebrating that. So we made sure to make everything sparkle, everything go bigger, 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 and by bringing in actual queens. So we had Pandora Box, Yara Sofia, Manila Luzon, and RuPaul. They all provided their own voice work. They all were in there supporting the project. By doing that, we were able to create something that was very much a celebration of the drag queens, the show, the culture as a whole. And I don't think that we've really run into any sort of problems because of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask if, has anyone complained? I know, it's really easy to accidentally cross a line.
We've certainly seen people who have said, hey, I do not like drag queens in general.
That's a whole nother. I was so positive thinking that
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about people being offended by that notion in general.
There are some people who do not like them and do not like drag queen culture, etc. And you know what? This is probably not the game for you if that's the case. But the people who like the show, who enjoy going out to drag shows, etc., really love the game and love how we've been able to bring people in and really bring I always call the spirit and the feeling of the show into the game.
So do you try and get people who are a fan of the show, which is, well beyond the audience who normally goes to drag shows in real life when tune into RuPaul's, or were you trying to go for expanding that audience, not just going for that base, but going for new people who may not have heard of RuPaul before?
We're going for both. And the whole strategy behind doing the game and integrating partners like World of Wonder, who's the production company for RuPaul's Drag Race, and Logo TV, who distributes the show in the U.S., we wanted to reinforce the brand and give something else out to people who were fans, but also something where people who may not have seen the show or have only seen the show in passing, it was a way to reintroduce them to the personalities and the spirit of the show.
So did your previous work with clients, way back in the day, did that help you when working on a licensed title? Because this was your first licensed game, right?
This was my first licensed game, yes. Absolutely, without a doubt. Because once you start dealing with licensed titles, you are now dealing with a lot of different people. And in Dragopolis, we had a number of people that we were dealing with. So the first time around, we were dealing with 4 personalities and 2 companies. And so we had all of the queens that we were working with, plus the 2 production companies. There was a lot of management, a lot of hand-holding, a lot of expectation setting.
Well, it makes sense because, if you were licensing Sonic the Hedgehog, those are characters, there's a document written down and what it's like, and maybe there's a person managing that IP. But when you're doing an IP of, this is RuPaul, this is me, this is, my persona, it feels a lot more personal to people.
It is, and the thing that's important to remember is these people make their livelihoods by being who they are. So, people like RuPaul, he is, his business is being RuPaul. And you want to make sure that what you're doing is very carefully crafted to match that persona. And so there was a lot of back and forth in terms of making sure that the imagery was correct. Is this a proper depiction of Ru? Is it okay for Ru to hold this? Is it okay for Ru to stand this way, etc.? There was a lot of back and forth with that to make sure that we were exactly spot on with that. Most things that people were concerned with were what were they wearing? and making sure that the look was exactly right, because drag queens are known for what they wear and what they put out there. So there was a lot of back and forth with that, and a lot of meetings with the queens to make sure that we had the right outfits set up for them.
So did they suggest we want to wear this, and they give you pictures of like real outfits, or did you come up with stuff and iterate back and forth?
It was both ways, actually. We came up with a couple of concepts, and we would do some pencil sketches saying, oh, we think it'd be really cool if you wore something like this. But at the same time, they have some very iconic outfits that they wear. So if you take someone like Manila Luzon is known for certain looks. She has got, for example, the pineapple dress, where she has a dress that is a giant pineapple. It's amazing. And it would be criminal of us to neglect putting the pineapple dress in the game as something that you can unlock.
Yeah, it's part of the IP.
It's part of the IP. And so Manila is known for that. Her fans want to see that. And so it's a great way for her to have that conversation with her fans and say, hey, look, here's something else of mine that you can get now.
Cool. So game came out. What was the reaction? You said, positive from a lot of people.
It was very positive. We got a lot of really good reviews from it. People who were fans of the show really liked the game and loved. I think that there were people who really, really liked the game, and there were also people who really liked that we just did a game, and they were just happy that we were doing something for them out there. And they said, this game is good. The first game was more of an endless runner style. Like, I'm not a big endless runner fan, but I'm really glad that you did something here. And so people were very happy with what we did. And the queens were also really happy because it gave them something to talk about. And queens love to talk about themselves. And I think that's true of a lot of people. But it gives them something else to tweet about, to Facebook about, etc. And it's an ongoing conversation with their fans.
So what was your next project afterwards?
After that, we ended up starting a conversation with Paramount Studios, or Paramount Pictures. And we met them at a conference, and I had seen that they were attending the conference, and they had said, hey, look, if anyone's looking to work with some movie IP, let us know. And I reached out to them. It just so happens that the guy I reached out to, his wife was a really big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, nice.
And had played Dragopolis and said, this is a really good game based on someone else's IP. It doesn't...
What a great way to get noticed.
It was really crazy.
I'm known
I'll
for
take it.
doing an IP well.
Yes.
And I personally know someone who knows the game, and that's just a really great highlight.
It was really fantastic. So that got me the meeting. So I got a meeting and sat down with Paramount, and they said, look, come in and pitch us on a couple of ideas. We've got a whole catalog of movies that go back decades. We've picked out 12 or 15 that we think are really ripe for turning into a game.
Fascinating. It's like, oh, we just have these IPs. We should do something with them. Not like, I'm looking for someone to make the Blink game. Just, oh yeah, what are you interested in?
Well, and that's how they approached it. I mean, they certainly guided me in a certain way, saying, here are 12 or 15 that we think you should look at.
Here's our most popular ones.
But if you wanted to go back, even into the catalog, you're certainly welcome to do that. But these are ones that we know have really strong fan bases. So I looked through those and picked out 3 and went in and pitched Paramount on those 3 ideas, and they really, really liked them. And I was thrilled. And we had a couple more conversations and decided that Mean Girls was probably the best starting point there. It was one where the license was, for whatever licensing reasons are out there, was the easiest one to get. And they knew that they could do a deal quickly and efficiently with that. And it was a strong title as well.
Yeah, very recognizable.
And so we immediately started on building Mean Girls. At the same time, we got noticed by a company down in Los Angeles that is launching a new technology that allows you to wager and win real money while you're playing mobile games, or any sort of game, to be honest.
It brings you right back to casinos.
I know, man, they had me hook, line, and sinker right there. I was like, what? How can I do this? So we signed on with them, and we did one of their flagship games, and that has technically launched, but we're still waiting for the big launch while everything gets
Soft launch and testing and
exactly.
all that.
But that's been out there, so we're doing some games for them as well, and those were our big next steps. We also knew that people really liked Dragopolis, so we decided we wanted to do an entirely new version of Dragopolis for everybody and kind of give back to the community there and say, hey, look, we can do an entirely new game for you guys and put something out there featuring new queens and just keep the content really, really fresh in there. So we split off into a couple of different directions after that.
So how do you scale up the company? You're going in so many directions now, so many IPs.
You lose sleep. That's one of the first things to go. Sleep and sanity go right out the window. I've always tried to scale smartly. And so I tend to scale with a lot of contract workers, people that I know, people that I can trust. And sometimes you need to just get some people in there that you don't know and you test them out and make sure that they work well. But the most important thing to do is build a team that you trust. Build in people who you can pass something off to, and they're going to think about it critically in the right way. For example, I can say, we need to put a purchase button on this screen to make sure that people are able to purchase XYZ. But I always like when a developer says, well, we could do that. And here's what happens when you do that, but I put in a couple of other things so that we had the right reminders, or we also were checking over here, and we were also driving traffic here. So people who have that ability to think critically, that's something that I really admire in people. So I'm trying to build a team with people like that.
So how do you spend most of your day now? Are you getting down with the code? Are you just doing high-level design and contracting it out? Like, how do you spend your average workday?
I do not have an average work day, first of all.
No game developer has an average work day. You probably less so.
Yes.
But grossly simplify it for me.
Grossly simplified, right now I'm spending a lot of time making sure that things are running correctly. And that means working with the PR team to make sure that we're getting PR out about the pieces. Excuse me. So working with them, managing the technical and the artistic teams, making sure that everyone is clear on the vision of what we're doing. I dig deep into the code sometimes, so I still do a lot of work with the code. I have no artistic skill, but I do know how to work with artists, and I know how to communicate an idea to artists. And so I work with them to make sure that we're getting the right interactivity in there and the right visual that we're looking for. So it's a lot more management right now. So I'm not in the weeds, coding things here and there, although I probably spend a day out of the week just doing that because I know how to do it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I say for my company, once Blast Monkeys got really big, I probably spent less than 20% of my time actually game designing, making games, and it was just managing and figuring out PR and building a community.
Right. And so a lot of my time is spent there right now because we've got so many good titles that are out, and we want to make sure that people are seeing them and people are enjoying them. So my time right now is spent on getting the word out.
So tell me how you got involved with PAX, because you were one of the people when they first started the Diversity Lounge.
Yes. So we were in the PAX Diversity Lounge, which is a new edition. It just started at PAX East in 2014. We were there for PAX Prime in 2014 and also PAX South last month. And it's a new initiative that the folks at PAX have been doing to do a couple of things. One is to create some sort of space where people can come together and say, you know what, there's a spot for me somewhere here. So it is a place for people to just come together, play games, hang out on the bean bags and play with their Nintendo DSs or whatever they're playing with right now. And a place for just people to come together of all sorts of backgrounds. So it's a very welcoming and open area.
Have it explicitly clear, you're welcome here, and here's a place to highlight that too.
Exactly. The other thing that it does is it is a chance for community groups and some very specified vendors to go and showcase what it is that they're doing. So you'll see a lot of folks there. We were next to a group that really specialized in helping people who had some sort of physical handicap game better. So they were the ones who were responsible for working with Blizzard to bring a lot of the colorblind options, the colorblind enhancements rather, to World of Warcraft. They work with developers to say, look, if someone is deaf, here's some things that you need to be concerned about if they're playing your game, because they're not going to pick up on these cues, but here are some other things that you might consider trying instead. Same thing if someone is colorblind, or if someone is using some sort of alternative input device. What are some things that you can do to make that experience better for them? So we had folks like that. There were folks who had, the Gay Gaming Group of Houston was there, who is just a big networking group of folks who like to come together and play games. So there, we've been next to, I can't remember the name of them, but there was an all-female Magic the Gathering group up in Seattle that goes and something Planeswalker. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they had a female community for playing Magic the Gathering. And so it's a great way for people to see that there are these groups out there and to give some visibility to them so that people know, oh my gosh, there really is something out there for me. And there are these other communities that I didn't even know existed.
And it's a really good way to highlight too, because you're showing off your games and your company there too. And in context, if you're on the main floor of PAX, you're just another company, another game.
Correct.
But next to all of these groups and this atmosphere and this positivity, it kind of puts your company in a different highlight of, this isn't just a game, this is a celebration of this community, this is something for a group that is well underserved.
Absolutely.
In many ways.
And and there's this whole topic that's going on right now of how do you build more diversity in gaming? How do you make games more accessible or more approachable or more inclusive as well? So how do you go and do all of that? And we are trying to be a part of that discussion, but we're trying to lead by example by what we're doing.
Very cool. So, how did you find out about the diversity lounge? Did you go into a PAX and you applied for it? Did someone approach you?
I'm friends with the guy who runs it, so
even better.
Yeah, so I had my in there.
I mean, that's how the industry works, right? You make friends and talk with people.
Sometimes that's not.
It's how every industry works.
It's how many industries work. Absolutely. It's not really the route that I've gone, though. I've kind of stayed on my own path. So I certainly have connections that are in the gaming industry, but I've stayed pretty focused to what I do. I come from, I've built other businesses that are not gaming, so I know how to build the business. I know how to run the business, and so I've been pretty solid on my path there.
All right. So speaking of that path, if I gave you the keys to a time machine right now, and you can go back to any point in your history and tell yourself something for 30 seconds, when would you go to and what would you say?
I would probably go back to right after Dragopolis released and say, get more help.
Get more people involved?
Get more help. Take a step back and see what other opportunities you have in terms of partnerships out there. Because, I was just saying, look, I've stayed on my own path. I have industry connections and I have friends who are in the industry, et cetera. But I don't think that I leverage those as well as I should. And I think that I need to, one of the things that I can do better is to reach out to those people more and build more partnerships. That is something that I'm starting to do now. And I'm starting to see some great results from that. But if I had done that a year ago, it would have been even better.
Like today, how many people are you working with involved in the company?
We've got 7 people in the company total. But I think that one of the things that we're looking at right now is how can we grow so that we're a little bit bigger? I'd like to be a little bit bigger. And also, how can we partner strategically with, other companies, other development studios, publishing houses, et cetera? How can we go and start to leverage other resources that are out there and create something that is even better as a result?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in today and telling me the story of the company. It's really, really interesting stuff. And I love hearing how you leveraged your experience over years of just diving into stuff. A lot of people, haven't had that opportunity experience too. And so it's really good to hear about, like, hey, even if you're going off and you're making a random poker game and doing a random thing, how that can lead into something really cool later on.
One of the things that I've really noticed is you never know where your next step is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It could come out of a bunch of weird stuff. So, I've done stuff in the past where I've put games out there and they didn't do as well as I wanted them to. But as a result of that, I am still able to point to it and point to the successes that are in there. So even if it's not a financial success, I can point to other successes that happened with that. So Fireflies, for instance, was not a great financial success by any stretch of the imagination, but we got a lot of recognition. And I was able to prove we can put out a top quality game out there, and we can get picked up by different gaming sites, get good reviews, get solid awards for it, and turn that into something else. And that gives me a good reference point to launch my next step. So that's something that I'm always looking at is, well, if this didn't go exactly as planned for one reason or another, be it, I didn't get to use the IP in the way that I wanted to, I didn't get the financials that I wanted to, I didn't get the schedule that I wanted to. What are the things that you can point to that do make it successful? That's something that's really important. And those sorts of things, there are other people out there who are looking for those. Mm-hmm. And how do you go and start to match up with them? That's where I'm at right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. Super cool. So I like to end every show talking about the games we've played lately, not just made.
Okay.
So I'll start. Besides Hearthstone, which has been my addiction, I just replayed the Game of Thrones episode 1. I haven't played through episode 2 yet, the new Telltale series, the modern choose your own adventure stuff, because I'm a huge story gamer, so I love that stuff. Plus, I'm a big fan of the books. Haven't watched the show yet, though, which I really need to get through.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, I've heard it's really good, but I've read all the books, so I know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, season 5 is changing a bunch of stuff. That's what I heard.
Well, have you read the books?
I have.
Okay, so I have to imagine that they're going to start shuffling like the last 2 books together, because they kind of focused on different characters, and the show will probably want to show everything happening simultaneously in real time, or rather than in how you learned about the events in the book.
Yes.
But I don't know if we can go more specific without getting into spoiler territory.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to be careful. Like, my wife, is like, don't talk about it. I just can't have a conversation with her about it, because even if she talks about her favorite character, an expression on my face might tell her that character's going to die. At some point.
Well, it's a good chance that character's going to die. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's a good chance.
The character's going to die. What about you? What have you been playing lately?
I've been playing a couple of things. I've been going back through a bunch of Blizzard's catalog, just because I tend to really like those games. I'm a big Diablo 3 fan. Mm-hmm. I really like playing that.
It's really interesting how that game has evolved post-launch.
It's done. It really, really changed post-launch, and all for the better. I played through it. I don't think I even got a character up to max level at launch, because I was like, okay, yeah, I've played this. I think this already feels like a grind. I'm done. I can spend my time better somewhere else. But when they came out with the giant patch that fixed all of the loot systems and added in an Act 5 and all of this stuff, that really changed the dynamic of the game, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm having a lot of fun going back and experimenting through that with different builds and different characters, etc. I keep coming back to StarCraft 2 as well. I'm a horrible, horrible StarCraft player. I really like it, but I'm bad.
Have you been into other RTSs?
No. I've tried to, but I haven't really found one that really has kind of scratched my itch quite properly. So
yeah, it's funny because Warcraft really got me into RTSs. Warcraft 3, actually, I should say, because I had played a lot of Command and Conquer and all sorts of stuff. I tried them out a bunch, but I never felt like I got good at one.
That's exactly where I am. And I've played Warcraft 3. Didn't really care for it as much, but yeah, StarCraft is still a fun game for me. So I usually just go through the scenario mode on that, and I don't do multiplayer because I don't want to handicap anyone. I don't want to handicap anyone with my poor skill set on there. The other things I've been playing are Assassin's Creed Unity. which is I just started that. I've got this whole back catalog of games.
Are you a fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise?
No.
See, I find it interesting too because it's like I played Assassin's Creed the first one, and I was
I played
kind of done after that.
I played probably the first 20% of the first one, maybe the first 15% of the second one. I was like, I don't like these. But I came back. So my niece and nephew are huge Assassin's Creed fans. And they just got an Xbox One for Christmas, and they got all of the Assassin's Creed stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get Assassin's Creed on my Xbox, and I am going to be able to play with them, etc. So I have been starting that.
That's a good reason to get involved in it.
It is. And to be honest, I like the game so far.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's not a bad game for sure.
no, but one of the big problems that I had with the original ones were the controls. And I found that it was really difficult to get my character to do what I thought I was telling him to do. I'm still having some of those problems. And I think I will always have some of those problems with this game, just because there are so many options of what your character can do. Like, no, don't just stand there on the ledge. Go down,
Jump up there.
Yes. You could jump on the table if you wanted to. Okay, good, solid choice.
It's like a Mega 64 skit.
It is, but I've been playing that a little bit. I've been playing Guacamelee, which is
that's a great one.
Yeah, it was. I love that because I love games that take a visual style or some sort of theme and embrace it.
Yeah, because to be honest, Guacamelee's gameplay,
It's fine.
it's okay. It's not bad, right?
No,
But
it's
you
good.
play that game because of the art, because
Yes.
of the visual, just eye candy.
It's so amazing, and it's so much fun to look at. And I think that what they've done with the gameplay, merging that with the art style, also is really good. And it takes what could have been just some pretty standard, not anything to write home about gameplay, and elevated it up. So I think it's better gameplay because of the art and the way that they've tied all of that together. So that's a fun one. And I keep coming back to Sunset Overdrive as well.
Oh, that's also cool.
That.
The main character kind of pisses me off a lot. He's super annoying.
Really?
Yeah, he's very unlikable. And it's weird because it's supposed to be you.
Right.
And then everyone in the world is just very unlikable. It's like I just want to get to the part where I'm just running around and grinding and smashing things.
But see, I think that fits into the same genre as Guacamelee in a way where it's like, hey, look, we're going to take this visual style, we're going to take this theme, we're going to just run with it. Mm-hmm. And they did, and it's amazing. And I've always said that shiny is my favorite color. And so it certainly gives me a lot of shiny in there.
Yeah,
so I'm really happy.
Especially when you're just, getting a huge horde behind you and messing around with a bunch of different ricochet weapons. It gets really fun.
I find I get lost a lot in that game because there's, you're turning around and then you're going up and down all over the place and you're spinning around one way or the other. So I get disoriented very easily, but I don't let that bother me. I have a good time.
Very cool. So if you want to find more about the show, you can go to beindynow.com and get past episodes, show notes, cool stuff like that. If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog, tobiahmarks.com, where I have cool articles about game development, or you can follow me on Twitter at tobiahmarks. Where can we find out more about So Much Drama?
At somuchdrama.com. So we're right there, and we've got all of our news and games up there.
Awesome. Thank you again for so much being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
For everyone else out there, go out and make some games.